Singles podcast hosted by yours truly, Siobhan Higgins, sport and performance psychology consultant, professional soccer player, and yoga instructor. In honor of Father's Day, today I have a very special guest, half of me, my dad.
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Luis Higgins.
Thank you.
This is going to be funny. And also this will be aired on Thursday, so Father's Day will have already passed.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring my dad on because you are a big reason I am the way I am. And I'm sure a lot of people want to know why I am the way I am.
Well, I think it's mostly your mother, but we can work with that.
Okay, good to know because I have a question. I have a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
That Joanna helped me with as well, my sister.
Okay.
But first, we're gonna have people get to know you. So, can you tell people where you are from?
Well, I was born in England, which is part of the United Kingdom, in a town called Cheltenham in Gloucestershire. It's on the west coast, just south of Bristol, which is one of the biggest harbours of the UK. But at the age of 3, I left there because my father was transferred to the Netherlands, and I lived in a town called Vlaardingen, which is now next door to another big port called Rotterdam, and I lived there for about 16 years.
Okay.
Because I arrived there, I had my 3rd birthday there in Holland, and then I moved back to the UK to go to college, to go to the University of London at the age of 18, and then after that, when I graduated university, I started my professional career.
Cool. And what is your professional career?
I am an insurance underwriter.
And how long have you been doing that for?
I have done a variety of roles within insurance for the last 36 years.
Okay.
So from risk management to underwriting to claims handling to being an insurance broker, I've pretty much done it all.
Cool. And the audience doesn't know, but my mom is from Ecuador, and you guys met in Ecuador.
Yeah.
And you got married at what age?
26.
Okay. Yeah, 91.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very nice. And so my parents have been together and been married for 32 years.
Yeah.
Awesome, y'all.
Well, it's one more than your sister's age.
Yeah,
so
that's what makes it so easy for me. Yeah. And we moved to the U.S. in 2000, so we've been here for 24 years now.
This month, yeah.
This month. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Next questions. Obviously, the goal of my podcast is to speak about sports and the mental side of it and whatnot. So, first question is, where do you think the love for soccer for you came from?
For me, my family, my grandfather, my father, we were very much soccer, football orientated. The family supported Manchester United. Mm-hmm. Because basically my grandfather was born in Trafford Park, which is right around the corner from Old Trafford.
Okay.
And so that's really where it sort of came from. I went to my first live soccer match at the age of 11. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately in that time, it was the earlier 70s, there was a lot of hooliganism. And so my father didn't think it was safe for me to go to watch a match at a younger age.
What's hooliganism? I can only guess.
Well, unfortunately, football in the UK and England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales it's almost very tribal. You have an affiliation with a club and it's a lifelong affiliation.
Yeah.
And people have a feeling that that they are a connection. And what used to happen is that when things went wrong for one club and the team won, the other one lost, and they really sillily got themselves into fights. And it was also to do with that at that particular time it was permitted to sell alcohol in the stadiums. And so a lot of alcohol-related violence stemmed from that. Mm-hmm. But then it even grew to that English hooligans, as they were known, would then become known throughout Europe. And so when they, if England was playing against Germany, for example, then the Germans would think, oh, let's provoke them into a fight and let's see who's stronger and who's better. And it just got totally out of hand until the clubs had to start clamping down on people, not allowing them into the stadiums anymore. So every time there were watts. And so now there's a lot of security at these football matches that a lot of people don't notice. The police have cameras on everyone, and they have sound recording that they can hear what's going on, so they can intervene almost immediately.
And they don't sell alcohol in stadiums anymore?
They sell them between a particular time. So you if you're in the boxes, in the sort of where the VIPs are, they will sell it up to the game and then after the game. But during the game, no.
Okay.
And the pubs and bars all around, the same regulation.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. So, okay. Interesting. So even if someone's watching a game at a pub nearby?
Nearby, no. So I can't remember now and if it's still enforced, but it used to be within a certain distance of the stadium, they wouldn't be allowed to sell alcohol.
Yeah, some people go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is it's like a religion following a club.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going to make a joke, but see you wearing a beautiful blue shirt, Dad.
I did that on purpose because I expected something like that from you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But, we're Manchester United, we're red, we're not dirty blues.
Well, for those of you listening, I love Man City, and I really...
But say why, though.
I was going to.
It's more to do for a player than...
Yeah, it is more to do for a player. It's to do with Kevin De Bruyne.
No, it's De Bruyne.
De Bruyne.
Yeah.
Kevin De Bruyne.
They mispronounce his name. That's why I sent you that thing the other day of him actually pronouncing his name, Kevin De Bruyne.
Kevin De Bruyne.
And remember, I can speak Dutch as well.
Yeah. Isn't he Belgian?
They speak Dutch, Flemish in Belgium.
Okay.
As well as French.
What's their main language?
It's both languages. It's a bit like Canada that speaks English and French.
Oh. Cool. So I started supporting them after the World Cup. I think it was in 2019 or 2018.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with him as a player, as a midfielder. I think he's so classy. He's brilliant, and he's just even gotten better since that year. It's been 5 years since then, but he does everything well, and he's not arrogant. He doesn't do anything, he doesn't do all these tricks or whatever. He just gets the job done every time, and he's so consistent. And
he's a very unselfish player. That's why he probably has the record for a few seasons running of assists, as opposed to him scoring goals.
Yeah. And then we saw him struggle with his country because he doesn't have the same support. I mean, they're not as good as Man City. So
no,
you can watch him and he'll get frustrated because he'll create opportunity and people aren't.
No, but there's a lot of things that people don't know about Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, that he was actually adopted. He, at a young age, from what I understand, from what I've seen of what he said himself, he was actually very insular and very shy. Mm-hmm. And he was always seen as being uncooperative as a result of that.
Yeah, I've read those articles.
Which tagged him, I think, unfairly. And so when he was at Chelsea, Mourinho didn't like him. And that's why he got rid of him. And so when he ended up in Germany playing in Wolfsburg, and that's where he started to shine, because I think they understood him. But again, when he first started there, they didn't get him either, because again, he's very insular and very shy and reserved. Really, when those sorts of things, the skill of a player should come through, and people should recognize that. But, it was a big hindrance for his career to begin with, and I think very unfair. But then, Josep Guardiola decided to buy him and wanted him, and that's why he ended up at City.
Yeah. So now he's shining.
And now he is.
There you go. Sometimes all it takes is a different manager.
Yeah. Well, it takes an individual that takes an interest in you as a player and wants to groom you and help you develop and become better.
Yeah. So that is the story of why I switched.
We'll leave it at that. You still have a Ronaldo shirt, but anyway, and it's a red one if I remember.
And it has number 7 on it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so I have a few questions, but do you remember how I got into football or soccer?
Yeah. You were on a rec basketball team. Mm-hmm. And after, I think it was the second season that you played basketball, some of the girls were saying that they were going to then start to play soccer, as they were calling it. Mm-hmm. And I remember that you came to us and you said, I want to play with them. It was more at that time, I think you were what, 10, 11? And it was, I want to play. And so I spoke to the other dads about it, and they said, there's a team, and it's a rec team. It was, at KD Youth Soccer, as it was called.
Yeah.
And you didn't get to pick a team. You were just allocated. You signed up because of the address you lived at. You ended up on a particular team, and that's how you ended up playing. Now, it just so happened that Sergio, who was the coach at the time, and Jack Black, who was another one, they both lived in very close to where we were living. And so naturally, you ended up in that group as well. But yeah, at first, your mother was dead against it.
I know.
Girls don't play football. Girls don't do this. Girls don't do that. And I said, but you played basketball because your mom played basketball. And I said, that's equally as violent as soccer can be. And she was like, yeah, but she was more concerned about your legs getting kicked and bruised and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's what shin guards are for.
Yeah, and she got me the biggest shin guards ever. And ankle guards.
Well, if anything, what that actually did, it did protect you, but it made you more brazen in your tackling.
It did, yeah, because I wasn't feeling anything.
Yeah.
And plus with the adrenaline, you don't really feel anything until later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why, people started to liken you to Roy Keane, because you'd go in hard tackles.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah.
And fun fact, my dad would show me videos of Roy Keane. So imagine little old 10-year-old, 11-year-old Siobhan coming downstairs and my dad's going, Siobhan, come in here and watch this. And I'm like, okay, what is it? I come over, there's a YouTube video pulled up of Roy Keane just making tackles, like tackle after tackle. This is what you need to do in your game. This is what you do. And it was never dirty.
No.
It was always clean, and you taught me how to properly tackle. And I even remember for the longest time I kept getting fouls called against me, or I kept getting booked because I was doing it wrong. I was like out swinging my leg and just wiping people out. But if you use the leg that's closer to the player and you kind of do it with like the outside of your foot, then it's more clean and you'll get the ball before the player.
Yeah.
Most times.
I mean, playing defensively, one of the things that, people tend to get a bit mesmerized with the step overs and the leg movements and the feet movements. You got to keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
And then, as long as you target the ball, the tackle may look bad.
Yeah.
But it isn't, because the intent is to get the ball, not necessarily the player.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't believe in teaching you to be, a hatchet player. That wasn't conducive to anything. When I played football, yes, sometimes we did that, but that was already because it was an ongoing battle, and I had the dents and scars to prove it. But those were things that you did to protect yourself more than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, to play dirty, it serves no purpose. And it's unsportsmanlike behavior, and I don't believe in that.
Yeah, and I was always taught by you to get revenge by putting the ball in the back of the net.
Correct.
Which does feel better, by the way, for anyone listening. It does feel better when you're up and someone's mad at you, and it's just like, oh well, we're winning. I can see why you'd be mad. And it's a better motivator than trying to be dirty, and that's not the type of player I'd like to be. I've had my moments where you see red and then you get a red, but you live and learn.
In all the time you've played, though, it's not been that many.
Yeah, I think I've only had one straight red.
One straight, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to my boyfriend about this the other day. He was like, "How many yellows have you had?" I can't count.
Well, in college career, you had one time with an accumulation of yellow cards that you had to sit out a game.
That also happened in club once.
And then you had the red card. You had 2 red cards in college.
Did I?
In 2 separate seasons, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I remember. I remember now. But it was a lot of it was UB, which is unsporting behavior, and that's for me mouthing off. Yeah, I feel like. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the last one, you had to take a lot of provocation. I mean, the player was in your face and very,
Yeah.
She was actually looking for a fight.
Yeah, she was, and she got one.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, yeah. Just there's no way we're gonna be able to talk about all the bookings I've gotten. Just know that the refs know me by name.
Yeah. Well, once they learned how to pronounce it, yeah.
Yeah. 21. It was my number at the time. Why do you think that I'm so competitive? And were your parents competitive?
We have a trait of competitiveness. I mean, my brother and I are very, very competitive. Not against each other in our own walks of life. I think it's more from probably my mom's father, my grandfather on that side.
Abby?
Abby. He was very driven as a businessman. To the point that, he had to start several businesses over and over and over again because of things going wrong, them collapsing, failing. And that was really mostly as a result of partners messing him up and taking advantage of him and actually probably stealing from him as well. But, they're long gone now. But yeah, I mean, I've played competitive sports really since a young age, be it swimming, be it football, soccer, be it rugby. I played a lot of rugby as well, especially in my later years in high school. And then, my brother played basketball. He did a little bit of soccer, but, he didn't go further. I mean, I started playing rugby as well at university, but then, I had a knee injury that sort of put paid to that.
Yeah. What knee injury did you have?
Torn meniscus.
Was it just meniscus or was it ACL as well?
I think it was it was a damaged ACL. It wasn't totally torn.
Could you tell me what, I guess, the process was back then? Because it's been a long time since the progression of medical diagnostics and just the procedures. I don't know. Like, what did they tell you at the time? Was this like, oh, I can't... This was you self-diagnosing, saying, yeah, my knee's not moving normal, I'm done, I can't do anything? Or did you go to a doctor? Did you get a scan?
Well, I went to hospital because, I mean, it happened. It happened on a day that I was supposed to have a rugby match and they cancelled it. So we went to play, pick-up football game. It was on Primrose Hill in Hampstead in London. And the pitch was pretty wet, damp. And I had rugby cleats in, rugby studs, which are slightly longer than soccer ones. And somebody passed the ball to me, and as I twisted to turn and follow, my right foot stayed planted in the ground. And as I twisted and turned, I just heard this crack. So a really over-amplified cracking of your knuckles.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And then, I had to limp to the hospital, which was up the road. And, then they put me in what they called I can't remember, a John Smith splint or something like that, I think it was, which was really a lot of bandaging. And it was, I think about, if I remember rightly, 4 or 5 nurses that had to hold my leg up and do the bandaging at the same time because my legs, according to them, were very heavy because I was very muscular.
The nurses.
Yeah. And then, yeah, from there, no surgery because it was the National Health, which is why, when... you had yours, I was so adamant that it was going to be dealt with immediately and by the best doctors possible.
Yep.
And with all the recovery needed. And, you went on and continued playing.
Yeah. And so for those of you listening, I tore my ACL meniscus when I was 18. And I went on to play professionally and played in college and didn't really have any complications afterwards.
No.
Had the meniscus initially was repaired, and then I tore it in a different place a year later, and then it was fixed, and then was on my way. And I don't really have any knee problems. Every now and then it'll ache, but that's just because I know it's going to rain. So now I have superpowers. But yeah, cool. Okay. Next question I have is, I have this. Why did you not want me to cheer?
Because although I accept that cheerleading is it's an athletic practice, I mean, it is a sport. I thought you were more suited to basketball or soccer. As an athlete, you were all round athlete, mainly because your attitude was, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Because you also used to do swimming, and I remember one time, it was probably the last season or the penultimate season that you swam, and you were really getting more and more into soccer at that time. You were saying, okay, I think I'll do swimming this summer. And I said, okay, great. That'll keep your fitness up during the summertime because there's no practice and all the rest of it. And I said, don't worry if you're not that successful, because you were going into a higher age group. You were younger, and you were going into a higher age group. And you were sitting in the back of the car, and you just went, Dad, I'm in it to win. I went, okay, that's fine. So that's what you did, and you got quite a few gold medals.
Yeah, it was fun. I really liked swimming.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to swim as well.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first sports I used to do.
And to think of it, it's really great cardio. Yeah, I remember Mrs. May used to tell me, or she was trying to convince me to triathlons, because it was a combination of swimming, running, and cycling, but I never cycled.
Yeah, well, you did cycle, but not so much.
I don't know. I don't enjoy it. Like riding my bike for fun. But I don't know if I would.
Well, living in Holland, it was a mode of transportation.
Yeah.
So that's how you had your independence. You could cycle around, but in there was bike paths as well that were separate from the main traffic.
Yeah. And we're starting to get a few here, but it's not the same, and it's so hot.
It's a nice attempt, but it's too hot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good to know. So why did you feel that me watching football on Sundays was so important? And don't answer yet. I'm going to tell the audience that my whole childhood, the way that I remember it, is waking up at 6, 7, 8 in the morning on Saturday or Sunday because Premier League is playing, to my parents screaming downstairs because, like I mentioned, they're so competitive, and either a goal was scored for their team or it was scored against their team. And so we're either happy downstairs or mad downstairs. So I had a different form of alarm clocks, and then I'd come kind of like half-eyed open, and then I'd come watch the game. But I never got into it until, I would say, maybe high school, when the World Cup happens, when I wanted to watch it on my own. And I kind of know the answer, but I wanted to ask you why you thought it was important for me to sit down and watch football games.
Primarily because it gives you an opportunity to watch how teams are set up on the field and how they play, what system they're playing. But also the standout players, you start to see how they play, what they do, what vision they're showing by, where they position themselves on the field, what sort of passes they're making, because they've already identified that another player is going to be running on to the ball, so they place it exactly where it needs to be. And so that way you start to learn and pick up from others what's going on. So, you can learn by practicing and being taught, but you also learn by watching and analyzing what somebody else is doing. Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. It's hard to get somebody to sit down and watch it. Feel like, I don't know. I remember sometimes not wanting to.
No, you didn't. You got to a phase where you didn't. It was almost like, okay, I'm going to duct tape you to the chair. but no, and it's something you have to want to do. But if you remember one of your previous coaches at Texas Premier, Victor, he did ask all of you players to watch at least one game a week.
Yeah, which is good. It's good homework. And now I believe in that as well. So, and I do remember, I think it was in high school, one of the World Cups, and just waking up and like we print out the schedule and I would, highlight the ones I wanted to watch, and I just binge watch the World Cup all day.
And even during college, you'd have people over in the mornings as well to watch them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I enjoy watching it now. And the Euros just started.
Yes, they started today.
Who won? I'm assuming
Germany. Unfortunately, Germany thrashed Scotland.
What was it?
5-1.
Well, I feel like that was expected.
But at least Scotland scored a goal. So.
Yeah. In what order did they score?
It was literally 1, 2, 3, 4. Then Scotland scored, and then Germany scored the fifth.
And I'm Scottish, so
yeah,
go Scotland.
Yeah. So, and they were with 10 men as well.
Scotland. Oh, really?
Yeah. So when you think about it, the worst was done when they had 11, and then they only had 1 goal scored against them, and they had 10.
Wow. And that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I did want to mention that I don't not like Manchester United. I just support Man City because something I respect about Man U is that if there's any team that's going to come down from a 3-0 loss in the last 10 minutes, it's Man U. I remember watching so many games. Obviously, you were pissed off that they're losing, but you kept telling me don't lose hope because you can win a game in the last 2 minutes. You've seen it happen, and I've seen it happen too. So that's stuck with me because I tell my athletes this as well. A game's not over till the final whistle is blown.
Yeah.
You can get a penalty last minute, or you can, I don't know, have a breakaway, or something can happen, and it's possible to win a game. So even going into games against teams that you know are better than you on the charts, you have to go in with the mindset like we can beat them.
Yeah.
If you're going in already thinking you're going to lose, you're already mentally lost.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a game, U11, U12. It was at Katie Park, and you're being thrashed 3-1. You were losing. And I remember at half time saying, look, just stay calm, find the opportunities, keep at it. And you ended up winning 5-3.
Cool.
But again, you were captain of the team that game, and you did rile up the rest of the players to start playing hard. And you ended up overcoming and pulling back and winning. And a lot of times when that starts to happen with a team that has been ahead, think they're comfortable, then the opposition all of a sudden starts scoring goals on them.
Yeah.
That mental attack can be very disconcerting. And if they're not resilient mentally, then they can just fall apart.
Yeah.
Which is what you took advantage of and were able to get through as a team.
Mm-hmm. Cool. But yeah, just wanted to note that if you're losing a game, doesn't matter what the scoreline is, it is possible. No. So even as a coach, especially as a coach, actually, if you're starting to doubt your team will feel that and they'll know that and it'll relay onto the field. And then
which is why I was so against subbing players in and out. At the different levels up until college, you could do that quite frequently where a player can come in, take them off, take them out. And that was, for me, one of my biggest frustrations of watching high school soccer.
Yeah.
Where coaches would second guess themselves, not stick with the plan, not let the team settle down. And, and each time you bring in 2 or 3 players, you change the team. You change it.
Yep.
You may not think you're doing that, but you are. You're fundamentally changing the makeup of the team. And so to leave them to balance and settle, I think it's much more productive. But, not everybody thinks like I do.
No. But, yeah, and I think I can't. Would you say this is like an American thing? Because here is where you'll see people subbing like 5, 6, 7 at a time. Yes.
I mean, at a younger age, youth age, I think it's not a bad thing to be able to substitute because especially playing in a state like Texas, where the weather, even when it's April, May, can be very, very hot. I mean, look already last month we were in the 90s and playing in that heat is not very easy to do. So to be able to sub players off for those purposes is fine. I don't think but from a tactical point of view, I think you have to be more careful. Which is why, again, during practice, during training, hydration is very important. Mm-hmm. Stamina is very important. Resilience is very important. So, but that's again, how you build that into, but it's something that's a gradual process from a young age to the older ones, because when you're dealing with teenage girls, you're all developing, you're all changing, and one of the things that I always used to laugh at on a Saturday or on a Sunday morning is that I don't know what team I'm going to have that day. Depending on who's in what mood, who actually is going to turn up, and things like that, because you were all at various levels of development, mm-hmm. as you were approaching puberty and things like that. And so, one of them might have broken up with their boyfriend, or this girl was mean to me, or this, that, and the other. And it's like, oh, Lord. And it's like, okay, ladies, let's get over all of this. We have a job to do today.
Yeah.
And then get you focused and get you going, and then fine. And as long as you lasted the first 5-10 minutes without a goal being scored against you, then you all settled down and started to do what you needed to do and what you could do.
Yeah. One of my questions on here is, what was it like managing my dad managed my team when I was U12 and U13. And
no, it was younger and longer. Yeah.
So as I thought that I started when I was 12 years old.
No, you were 11.
Okay, so I was 11.
Yeah.
So you managed the team at 11 and 12.
Yeah, I was involved in the management of that because remember I was involved in doing it when you were playing for
Texas Premier.
No, before that, even KDU soccer, I was involved.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was with Jack and Sergio.
Yeah.
Then remember that because of how things were, one of the things that we decided to do was put you in competitive soccer, as it's called in Texas, as opposed to travel soccer, which is in the rest of the country.
Okay.
And so we went to the local club at the time, which was Texas Premier, which doesn't exist anymore. They already had several teams in your age group. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, if you're creating a new team, you can start in this division, which was a lower division than what the other ones were playing in. And, you went for a tryout and there wasn't enough players to create the team. So I had to then go out and recruit other players. Mm-hmm. And we took them a lot from your original rec team that wanted to be playing competitive, because it was a big difference in expense as well.
Yeah.
So some parents couldn't afford that and didn't want to pay for that. But, we decided if you were dedicated and you wanted to do it, that's what we were going to do. And so then that team, remember, in its first season, in its first game, got absolutely hammered 4-1. And then at the end of that season, when you had the other game against that team, you beat them quite convincingly. And in fact, in the first season, you were the only team in that club to win your actual league and get promotion.
Yeah, was that the photo when we were in the paper?
Yeah. That was a photo when you were in the paper.
That was cool. Okay, that's good for me to remember, because some of these slip my mind, but I always remember being a player that was on a team that was lower, and then I've always had to earn my way up. Yeah. So the way that I describe myself as an athlete is like I'm not always the best player when I jump on the team, and that's usually never the case. So with Texas Premier, I think I was one of the better players, mm-hmm. and then we all moved up a division, mm-hmm. and then at that point I think I stayed in that division. Mm-hmm. Because of social. And I remember having the conversation with you because the teams above me were asking if I wanted to play with them, and you asked me if I wanted to, which I do appreciate that you let it be my decision, because for me at the time I did it a lot for social. I had friends, my best friends were on the team, and I enjoyed it. But then later on I was happy to move up because I saw it more as, this is an opportunity to get better. And so yeah, that I can see how that started, and that we were in the lower division, constantly earning our way up, and that taught me resiliency.
Well, but also you see, as a team, you grew together.
Yeah.
So you overcame adversity, mm-hmm. And you achieved the next level. Then you went to the next level. Then you went to the next level. And then when Texas Premier folded or merged with another club. We moved the team as a group of parents all agreeing to go to National Fusion, as it then was.
Yeah.
And again, you had to face that you were the second team. Mm-hmm. But I remember that, the year before, where there was a tournament at the club that we were at, Texas Premier, and I remember that the practice there was that they had coaches, and the coaches would be involved in the games, except we were playing against the team above us in category, and so I was allowed to run your team as a manager, and another dad ran the other team. But the coach, one of the coaches, in fact, he was one of the directors of the club, he said, don't be surprised if you get beaten and this, that, and the other. And I just looked at him and I said, okay, you think so? I said, okay, watch. And they scored the first goal.
I think we won like 3-1.
And you ended up winning 3-1.
Yeah.
And he just walked off, and I said, hey, Dylan, what did you think of that? And he just didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
But that was the thing that actually, unbeknownst to me at the time, caused a lot of ruckus with the other parents of the other team, because they were like, where are all these players? Why aren't they on our team? Mm-hmm. Because it was you. And
we were a tightly knit
you
group.
Were, yeah.
And I like that. That builds, I don't know what to call it, but I can see why when teams have been together growing up, say you're on the same team as someone for 10 years. That's a long time. And the majority of the time it's very exclusive and it's very difficult to get in because they don't want to change the dynamic because you know how people play. But I remember going through a lot with that team.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you went through a lot of stages of life. You went through a lot of sports development, athletic development, and you achieved a lot of success, which again, because it was earned, because you all worked for it, it was a very, very good thing for confidence and self-esteem.
Yeah.
That you could overcome adversity, even though everybody may have thought, oh, you're not good enough, you're not as good as we are. And it was like, okay, more fool you if you think that, because we're going to whoop you.
Yeah, it was constantly proving ourselves.
And you ended up doing it.
Yeah. And I just wonder, in the position I do, like what I do now, it's hard to teach an athlete that without going through it.
It's,
It's
you can only, the athlete has to experience those things, yes, in my opinion. You can give examples and try and find things that they may relate to that they've experienced. Because like you just said earlier, you'd forgotten a few things.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm reminding you of how it was at that particular time. Also remember all the text messages you got. What uniform are we wearing? Where we have to be? And of course, I'd already posted it all on Facebook. That was the only reason why I joined Facebook was to put it there so that all the girls could see where they had to be, what time, what uniform, and what was going on.
Now teams should have Instagrams. If you think about it, for the youth teams, I wonder what they do.
Yeah, I mean, there are different products now out there that that the clubs assign to and use. So I think they communicate that way now.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Yeah, when I coached at St. John's High School, we did a group me, so a group chat with the girls to know, and that's high school level.
Yeah.
Something that I'm going to divert a little bit to a different topic. You mentioned things about hydration is important and whatnot. So a lot of people don't know, but the reason I'm wanting to interview my dad is really because I credit a lot of my success to my parents and the way that you guys have helped me and supported me my entire career. I've always been supported, whether that be financially or morally or giving me physical things. I was always set up I had the platform to succeed. And I'm thankful for that. And I wanted to talk about the food aspect because it's the joke in the family that I can't cook, but it's because I've never freaking had to, because you have always cooked for me. And so even in college, I went to college in Houston, so half an hour from home after I transferred. And my dad, most of the time, especially during preseason, like I remember that you would meal prep stuff for me, or you would just give me, extra of the leftovers or whatever. And it was easy to see you. And so it was easy for me to get food. But for a lot of the time, my dad paid attention to what I was eating because nights before games, it would be intentional what I would eat, or the day before a game. And I didn't realize this until later. I was in college, and I don't know if you remember this, texting you about it because I was learning about all the support that's really important for an athlete, but in my master's program. But I didn't realize that a lot of people don't have the type of support that I did. And I can't believe how I didn't know. I was ignorant to it. So I thought that a lot of people had the support that I did, and they don't. And so another reason why I wanted people to listen to this is to see like what you did for me, because you even cooked for me, you meal prepped for me, like you set me up for success. If I ever forgot my cleats, my parents would drive and bring me new cleats. Or little things like my dad was always looking in academy, and he saw the new Gatorade shoes or like the new little electrolyte things. He would buy them so I could test them out. If there was those, I remember it's so hot, like those towels that you put in, like the frog ones, and you like put it in the cooler, and you would give me that, or like any little things. And I see it in one of the parents of a girl that I train. The dad does that for her too, and she loves it. And I don't feel like she's being forced into doing things, and I never felt like I was being forced into playing. I always loved it.
No.
And so I think that's important too.
Yeah. I mean, when it came to that, really, it's like a car. If you don't put fuel in it, it's not going to run. If you don't change its oil, you're not going to run. If you don't change its tires, you're not going to run. And so with an athlete, you have to make sure that you're putting in the right fuels. and not putting in the wrong fuel. So you have to find a balance between protein and carbohydrates, hydration, sugar, all of these types of things that you're going to use. Because I remember when I was playing rugby in my sort of later teenage years, I would probably lose between 5 and 10 pounds in a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a game. And that was living and playing in Holland and in England, not in Texas where the heat is. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine how much dehydration is going on in, a hot day. I'm not going to say summer's day because most days are hot in Texas, except for a couple of months in the, in the fall and in the winter. And even then, you might have a hot day. But it was always, okay, so your game is going to be here. But we used to do it in a different way as well when we had tournaments. Because tournaments, it was maybe 2 to 3 games in the first day, 2 games in the second day. And if you got through to the final, you might have a semifinal and a final on the same day as well. So, when you think about it, you could have up to 7 games.
Yeah, which was they don't do that anymore.
No.
It's maybe 5 max, but that's
And I remember, we had a seminar with I think it was the South Texas Youth Association, one of the directors, the sports directors, and he was very anti that type of thing because it's too much. Mm-hmm. At an older age, when you are probably past 15, 16, your body needs time to recuperate.
Yeah.
And so for it to be able to recuperate, you have to make sure that the right food has been put in there as well. And so that your body is taking the minerals, the proteins, the carbohydrates, and, the vitamins and all of these things as well. Mm-hmm. And so that's why really, it was more the food. Yes, there was a lot of Gatorade and a lot of other sports drinks that some of them had far too much sugar in them, mm-hmm. which isn't necessarily a good thing. Mm-hmm. Anything in moderation, you got to be careful with. It's fine, but you got to be careful with it as well.
Yeah.
So when it came to that, the food was so in the mornings, bananas with peanut butter.
Yeah.
Oatmeal porridge. Yep, which used to like, or Weetabix as well.
Yeah.
And then, in the evenings, the day before, it would be pasta. Mm-hmm. But again, it would be protein, but not too greasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pasta with chicken.
Pasta with chicken
with
or something.
Macarones most of the
time. Or macarones,
Yeah. And for those who don't know, my dad's a really great chef, so I am very thankful for that. Always properly fed.
You're welcome.
Always. And then it went beyond. So my dad cared about my nutrition, and my dad cared about my preparation. So something I learned from it. Why are you laughing?
Go on.
Well, I'm just going to talk about setting my bag out the night before. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't do this, and it's so important. Like setting things. If you have an 8:00 game, there's no way I'm going to be waking up in the morning at 6 to pack my bag, because what if all of a sudden your socks are missing? What if all of a sudden your shin guards, you left them at your neighbor's house and you forgot? And I feel like I learned this the hard way once, but for the most part, when I was younger, my dad would prep it for me. So my bag was always done. He'd have me double check it, or he'd have me check it, then he would double check it. But it's really important to make sure that your child is prepared. Otherwise, you're doomed.
Yeah, I mean, it was a gradual process.
Yeah.
When you were younger, I would do it most of the time. But then that really was part of your training. Mm-hmm. You had to learn that these things were important, and it's like anybody that has a particular job, be you a mason, you need tools, mm-hmm. And your tools to play soccer were your cleats, mm-hmm. your uniform, your shin guards, and change of other clothing as well, and then in addition to that, water. So you had my big jug. Your big jug as well.
Yep. Yeah. And then we learned to always pack both, because at that age, it's not just you're going to wear white. If the other team shows up in white by accident, then you're going to have to switch. So you all have to be prepared for that. So advice to anyone who's an athlete is always be prepared and bring extra. Yeah. So that's extra cleats, extra shin guards, extra socks, extra warm-up top, extra pre-wrap, whatever, because I guarantee you someone on your team is going to forget one of those things.
Yeah, they would.
And you could be a lifesaver.
So you all had your backpacks. I had my backpack as well, which had, an extra pair of shin guards. It had an extra pair of goalie gloves. It had the first aid kit, the magic spray, as all the parents used to call it, for when you got kicked and this, that, and the other. Those were things that when you were preparing the day before, the night before, it was because, yes, there's the mad rush in the morning. I mean, and things do get forgotten. I remember one time with the semifinal, we arrive at up in Cyprus, and you'd forgotten your cleats. And luckily, one of the other girls had a pair, and you were able to use them.
Yeah.
I remember it was Courtney.
Was it? Or was it Adriana?
No, it was Courtney.
I think I've forgotten twice because I do remember Adriana lending me some cleats.
You might have done, but I mean, I think that time I wasn't around.
Well, I was going to say that my dad, pulling up to the games, we would pull up, like I'd maybe be napping or listening to my music or whatever in the back. And my dad would say, Siobhan, you have everything, right? Like he's the one double checking. And I'm like, well, we're already in the car. So for me, I've double checked, he's double checked. So sometimes I'd mess with him and be like, oh, I forgot my shin guards. And he'd like slam on the brakes. And I'm like, just kidding, ha ha ha. And so I did this a few times, crying wolf. And then sure enough, I finally actually forgot something.
Yeah, so you got bitten on the butt.
Yeah. And I think I've actually forgotten something about 3 times because remember we had to buy cleats at Academy once. What was that about? I think I forgot.
No, I think what happened there, if I remember, they were disintegrating on you, so you needed another pair.
Okay. Yeah, because especially those tournament days, like have 1 or 2 pairs because it's hot. And if you're on turf nowadays, the cleats melt and everything. Yeah. But I remember that. Yeah. I remember the card jerking.
Yeah, and then the argument as well about them being leather versus synthetic and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. Because the leather ones were always tougher and stronger.
Yep. And taking care of your boots, which my dad did for me as well. So here's another thing is that I would say that I didn't, quote unquote, care about the type of cleats that I wore until high school, specifically freshman year. And I had some really cool Nike Tempos. I'm a big Nike. My first cleats were Diodoras. They were black. And then I switched to the same type, but in pink.
Yeah, 2 pairs.
2 pairs, yeah.
And then a white pair.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, and they were shark skin.
They were really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad never let me get colorful ones when I was younger because he would say that it would draw the referee to me. And since I was playing like Roy Keane, you don't really want to be noticed on the pitch. Otherwise, you're going to get booked more. And I think there are actually statistics for people getting more fouls if you're wearing a certain color cleats because, yeah, it is easy to identify. And I've refereed as well. So, yeah, I'm like, oh, the one with the green cleats, it's you again. Mm-hmm. Now I know for sure. Mm-hmm. So good point. Yeah. But my pink cleats, long live. Yeah. And then after that, it was the Nike Tempos. I never liked the Copas. I tried them, and they always hurt. And they even gave my toes blistered and like they bruised at the top. Yeah, the Tempos were narrower. So as you grew older, your foot got longer, but it didn't widen. Mm. So the Tempos were better because Adidas or Adidas was too wide for you. Yeah. But that's why I liked the Diodoras because they were leather and they were narrow and they used to form to your foot. Yeah, they would. Mm-hmm. So I liked those, and then I stayed Nikes really my whole career. I think I wore a pair of Adidas in my professional career, but that's because someone gave them to me. Yeah, and I liked them. Yeah. But I was going to mention that for y'all to know is that I would come down after a game, like muddy games or if it's raining or anything, my dad would take care of my cleats. I wouldn't do that until later because that's when I cared about them, when I would start to pay for them because I didn't know how much cleats were. And those things are expensive, especially if you're getting good ones. So my dad would polish my cleats. He would dust them off. He would wash them with a cloth. And then I'd come back down and they were like brand new. And so I'm thinking like, oh, how are my cleats all nice and pretty all the time? And he goes, yeah, because I freaking clean them. Mm-hmm. Or if it was soggy because it rains a lot or muddy, you'd put like tissue in them or towels in them so it would absorb the water and you put them in the garage. So my dad took care of that. What else did dad take care of? A lot. A lot. The laundry. Another thing that mom and dad did, and my sister too, is that they were practically always present to all my games. And so I don't think I ever missed a training session in my whole career. I think I in college, I was late to one. And that was for some sort of medical issue, and we're not going to talk about that. That's been discussed before. That's been discussed.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think I ever missed a practice, not even due to sickness. And even if I was sick, I would go to sit and watch.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole time, even, and that was the whole thing about having the team dynamic. So even if you were injured, the expectation was that you would at least come to practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yes, it wasn't possible, it wasn't feasible, depending on the injury. Illness wasn't possible, as well. But there had to be a real reason. I'm not using the word excuse on purpose. It had to be a reason that I can't make it because of, and that's acceptable. And as long as you told me when I was the manager or the coach, or the other coaches later on, this is what's happening, and I can't. Then fine, you were okay. But remember, the rule used to be you didn't come to practice, you didn't play.
Yeah.
Or your time was severely curtailed.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't fair on the other players that did show the dedication and the effort not to be rewarded with playing time.
I agree. Yeah. And it's another way to earn your game time as
Yeah.
well. You show your dedication. That's part of playing your role.
Yeah.
You can't just show up and play because you're good. You need to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2 more questions. One, I could have so many questions, but just for time restraints, maybe we'll do a part 2.
Can if you want.
Cool. What advice would you give to a parent who might not be interested in their child's sport, but their child is good at the sport and wants to continue playing at the next level?
Okay. It's not a hard question to answer. It's more to do with what I would say to that parent is be a parent. Being a parent involves a lot of sacrifice. It does involve expense, but I mean, it's all to do with sacrifice and being prepared to support your children. Your love for your child, no matter how many children you have, you love them equally, and you try and help them succeed in life. Some of us are more driven to do that because of our own personal experiences, be it a lesser level of support or a lesser level of understanding. I mean, I've spoken to parents that, said, well, my parents never supported me in this, and I never understood this about sport and this, that, and the other. And I used to say, well, if your child, son or daughter, wants to do something, if they're dedicated to doing it, the reward should be that you should be there to support them, to help them do it. And you'll remember I used to ask you, okay, no pressure, do you want to do it again next time? And the answer would be, yeah, of course, Dad.
Yeah, I would get mad. I'm like,
you'd get mad at me. But it was more a question of I wasn't going to be the one that said, you are going to do this. I was not going to live my life vicariously through you, which is another issue that many athletes have as well.
Yeah.
Where parents tend to get a little bit overheated, and that's probably one of the reasons why I got into the coaching, managing side, because I was less inclined to get into trouble that way. Because again, when I saw things that weren't happening on the field correctly, and maybe referees weren't seeing what was going on, I'd get a little vocal. But
little vocal.
Back to your question, it's really of, if you see that your child is committed to do this, I mean, and remember, we had a conversation, and we would have that conversation regularly. Are you still committed to doing this? If you are, I will support you, and I will help you, and I will try and make the journey as easy as it is as possible. And so when you think about it, that it's not just me. It was your mother, and to a certain extent, it was your sister as well, because, when you had those tournaments in Disney, we went as a family.
Yeah.
And that was after Christmas, and it was usually around New Year. Other tournaments, to drive up and down to Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. Yep. To drive to Overland Park in Kansas. Yep. For the national finals that you went to. That's a lot of driving. And at one time, if you recall, I was still coming back working in New Jersey, and I was coming back every weekend for games.
Yeah, I do remember.
So that's really where it is. You have to, if the dedication is there and you see the dedication there, it's more give the child or give the athlete encouragement. Because if the athletes can't rely on their own family, who can they rely on? But that's one of my beliefs. A lot of people think, well, their coach is more important, and that can be the case. It can be. Other people they have an affiliation with or a connection with can be more important as well. But from my perspective and your mother's perspective, we supported you in what you wanted to do. We supported Joanna when she was doing swimming as well. We supported Joanna when she was doing choir. It's whatever you guys decided you wanted to do, and if we could and we had the time and we had the money to do it, we would do it.
Yeah. Thank you. One more question, and I have a feeling there will be a part 2. But what was the hardest part for you and Mom as a parent, having a child that played soccer professionally?
Well, fact we couldn't watch the games
in person,
and
sometimes at all,
or at all.
Freaking Hungarian.
Because you were in Hungary or you were in Scotland, and Portugal and all the rest of it. So and then of course we were not there, although with WhatsApp and with phone calls, but there was a time difference and the thing, so we weren't there to be the support group that we were originally. But that also started when you went to college and started playing in college. Yes, we were there for the games. We would travel to the games. I don't think I missed any except for maybe 1 or 2.
I know. And that was due to a natural disaster, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harvey.
But even then we managed it. So the irony was we'd just come back from Mississippi.
Yeah.
For that one. But yeah, it's the difficulty is that yes, you cannot be there to pick up, because again, when you go off and play professionally, it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
It's more callous. The focus of the manager or the coach is for the success of the team. They don't care about the sensibilities of the player.
Right. Yeah. And I've spoken to other people about this, but once you play professionally, you're more on your own. And yes, people are depending on you, but there aren't as many people holding you accountable. Like, it's a job. And so you're expected to do the things that maybe the support system would be pushing you to do. Yeah.
And the thing is, if you don't do them, then okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, going back to what we were saying at the very beginning, the perception of an individual, fairly or unfairly, can go for them or against them. So you look at a player like Cristiano Ronaldo, you look like a player like David Beckham, very dedicated players, used to stay behind. David Beckham was very insular and very quiet as well. But everybody saw the amount of work and effort that he put in. Yeah. Ronaldo did as well. The hours and hours and hours of practice that they used to do. Then you look at something like we mentioned before with Kevin De Bruyne. He was misunderstood as being difficult because he wasn't very communicative. But not everybody is that. Nobody is extrovert.
Yeah, or vocal.
Yeah. They just get on with the job.
Yep. And he gets on with it. I think that's the first thing I noticed about him, is that he just gets on with it.
Yeah.
And he's classy. And that's respectable.
So, somebody like Pep Guardiola will pull him out of his shell. And you've seen that in the press, and you've seen that on TV sometimes where it looks like they're having an altercation. But Pep Guardiola is very emotional. He's very expressive. And I think people misinterpret what he's actually doing or saying. It looks like he's going crazy and shaking his hands and
dramatic
and being very dramatic, but it's a passion.
Yeah.
And the passion pushes him to have the success that he's had. And if you remember, Pep Guardiola as a player, his manager was Johan Cruyff.
You did tell me this, but I personally do not remember this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So his player.
That was my first move that I mastered, the Cruyff.
Yeah, the Cruyff or the Cruyff.
The Cruyff, as I call it. I remember Coach Victor told us, he was teaching us skills.
Yeah.
And at this point he said, okay, your homework is to go home and practice it at least 50 times a day. And I was like, homework. And I don't know why, because with my real homework, I was, but with soccer homework, I was like, yeah, he's so right. I'm going to master this skill. And so, and then he would say, the next training, I will know if you've done it or not, which is so true because you'll see it in the behavior. So when I tell the kids that I train to juggle, I'm like, just juggle for 10 minutes a day. And then I have them juggle and it's not great. I'm like, so were you juggling last week? Like, well, a few times. Like, I actually already don't know the answer because I can see it in the performance.
Yeah.
But
I mean, as a kid as well, one of the practices was actually kicking the ball against the wall.
Yes.
Constantly. Trapping it, flipping it, spinning it over, constant.
Yeah.
Because again, you're on your own. You didn't have anybody to play with, so you do it against the wall.
Yeah, and repetition. Repetition's important.
Yeah, and it's not the fun side of it, but it helps you shine in a game, and it's things you pick up and learn.
Yeah.
But that's why, again, watching television, watching the games on TV, you see the tricks or the skills that players are demonstrating, and if you try and emulate them, that's another thing that you add to your repertoire of skills.
Yeah. And another thing that just came to mind is that because I used to take free kicks a lot, you would tell me to just practice over and over and over again because it becomes muscle memory and then you don't have to think about it and you're just doing it. And I agree with that. I don't know the science behind it, but sounds about right. It's true because when I had my ACL surgery, my first one, I forgot how to. Your body forgets how to walk, and I'm thinking, what happened to the muscle memory? My muscle's forgetting, and the PTs would tell me, yeah, your brain or body forgot how to walk, and we have to teach it how to do it again. It's like knee up, heel toe down. I'm thinking, oh my god, okay, how am I going to kick a ball again? But
it came back. It came back.
Yeah.
But that was the thing. I remember as a kid, before we were allowed to play on the team, we had to demonstrate to the coach that we could actually kick a ball. So outside your foot, inside of your foot, on your laces, knee over the ball, all of those types of things. I mean, if you recall, sometimes, people would kick the ball and it would go ballooning over the bar. And I'd say, you're leaning back, your knee's not over the ball. That's why it went there. Yeah,
there's a science to it. Yeah, and I would say as a player, I'm not someone who just skies a ball. If I'm missing, it's because, I don't know, a little bit. I'd normally miss wide or shoot at the goalie. But yeah, I couldn't stand when someone just skies a ball. Like, it happens every now and then, but when you're constantly doing that.
But that's why, shooting at the goalie, that's why sometimes, I used to encourage goalies to wear the flamboyant colors. Yeah. Because your eye is naturally drawn towards them. So
is that why they're obnoxious? Because
no, it can be, but not necessarily.
Goalies are a whole nother topic to talk about.
Yeah, they're a particular type of player and a particular character needed to play.
Yeah, agree. So just for time constraints, we will stop here, but I have a lot more I'd like to talk to you about on air. And so it's Thursday, theoretically, when people are listening. So for all the fathers out there, happy Father's Day. And if you are a father, I hope that you gain some insightful information from my dad and from myself to see a little bit about what it takes to raise someone who played at the highest level. And I end normally on a final note by giving you the floor if you have any advice or words or something silly, funny, or appropriate you would like to say. Now's your time.
Well, it's like with anything. One of the things of your soccer journey was there was the successes and there was the failures. And if you remember, one of the things I always used to say to you, you learn more from a defeat than you do from a victory. And at first, you all would take it very much to heart that you lost the game because you didn't like losing. But soon, when you remember that feeling of how it was to lose, that's what you don't want to have repeat. So you put more effort in the next time to win it. But also, again, it's like, look after your teammates, be a team, and work together to achieve a common goal. And, I saw one of the podcasts where you mentioned something that I'd said to you about you don't have to like your teammates, But what you do have to do, and the responsibility that you do have, is for the good of the team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have no business being on it. And so that is it.
Yeah, and I agree. And I carry that with me. And then the defeat quote I'd say as well, you learn more from a loss than you do from a win. And it's true, because if you're winning, it's most of the time you're doing a lot of the things right, which is what leads you to win. And if you're losing, you're doing things wrong, which is what leads you to a loss. Not in all cases, but you can pick and choose, why did I lose this game? And so,
Yeah, I mean, it's stay resilient. Don't allow yourself to be demoralized, because once you're demoralized, then mentally they've beaten you.
Yeah. So good. Well, thank you, Dad.
You're welcome.
To anyone listening, I hope you've gained some helpful insight to why I am the way I am and how I've made it to the level that I have. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers listening, and I look forward to speaking with my dad again for a part 2. Have a good Thursday.
Goodbye.